You mind not sharing your screen until you're ready to go? Then, okay, yeah, now we're ready.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, we're ready. Right. I think member Rossis is, I think, going to be a little bit late, so let us begin. Calling to order the Select Board for the Town of Hanover for Monday, March 24th. I would like to reorder the agenda with the consent of my fellow Select Board members to move the public comments up front, and additionally to put the discussion surrounding the budget items in front of the public hearing where we discuss the budget and potentially adopt it. The public hearing with respect to the TIF district is moved to the following meeting. So with the approval of my fellow Select Board members, we will reorder the agenda to begin with public comment. This is the period of the agenda when the public is welcome to address the Select Board. We ask that one addresses issues not already scheduled on the agenda. We ask that individuals restrict their comments to 5 minutes, and further that they direct questions to the chair. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the Select Board at this time?
I do.
Dave, if you can please come forward and have a seat and just tell us your name, although we all know your name, but tell us your name and address.
Okay, I'm Dave Chaffee. I live in Etna. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to this esteemed board. I know you got a hard night. I've been through it up there as a select person. Anyway, I come to you on bended knee. I know that there is a Brissett Family Trust, and what we would like to do is to tap into it to support the Memorial Day celebration that we do up in the Hanover Center Green. We're looking to find about $4,500. Now, Lou, I knew quite well. He was an avid Marine. He got me into the Improvement Society in 1982. I cooked hot dogs and hamburgers with him at Street Fest, and I'm one of the few who played his 3-hole golf course on his place up in Stratford. And he was a gung-ho Marine, and his good friend John O'Brien, who was the forester for the town forest around the Hanover Reservoir, was also a Marine. And I can see Lou would be very proud to see that his money was spent on the Memorial Day celebration. We've been bucking along for 3 years now, and it was such a successful thing last year that we think if we can get proper funding, we can make it even better. So $4,500 would cover things like a large tent, 40 by 60. It would cover the band and somewhere near 200 people. We would put it out on the green. Last year it rained and we had to run into the church and raise hell in the church. And the band, we got the Lime town band, and we've found somebody to support that. So that won't need to be paid for. But anyway, it was such a thing last year that people really loved it. And one of the things that I've got the program here. Some of you probably remember Lillian Bailey. She's the one who started it way back around 1961, and I helped her a few years to keep it going. But she and Lou Brissett would really be tickled, and I'm sure that they'll be dancing in their graves when they hear the Lime Town Band playing. What we've tried to do is include as many of the kids as possible, because this is what Lillian wanted to do. And so we use the scouts. They come in and they do a little color parade coming in. And they also are the ones who will switch the flags in the cemetery. And then there will be some grammar school kids who will recite something like a prayer for the child. Anyway, they'll be part of the program, a reading from Dr. Seuss. And the Limetown Band will periodically play. The audience will sing, all that sort of stuff. And it's a great thing to have in Hanover. Budget-wise, it's been rather meager in the past. But if we got $4,500, that would be absolutely wonderful. We have a lot of volunteers who will help with everything. And it probably would be good to have the weekend off for the Parks and Recreation. They tried to do too much, I think, in the beginning, and now we've got all the people we need to pick things up. So hopefully you will consider using the fund for the Memorial Day celebration. $4,500 will help immensely. We'll spend it wisely, and we'll put on a good performance for the people. We don't want to put flags up honoring certain vets in Hanover or heroes, because there are so many heroes, we run out of flags. So this would be the appropriate way to do it, and everybody participates. Thank you for giving me time to speak to you, putting me early, and I can get up early tomorrow and boil sap.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Thanks for all that you do for Memorial Day celebration. Okay. Any other members of the public wish to address the select board at this time?
Is it possible to know whether or not that grant that would be granted, which would be granted?
Well, so I can't grant wishes, but the select board can discuss it. I think it's also maybe a conversation with Parks and Rec. So I'm looking at Rob.
Sure. So when I was made aware of the ask, I reached out to Parks and Rec, and my understanding is that they do the coordination with you.
They asked us to do it again this year.
But they do they don't run it, but
They provide the flags, they provide the barricades,
yeah.
and they provide the program but otherwise in terms of coordinating everybody and figuring out what we need.
My understanding is you and John had spoke last week.
Yeah.
So this is the percent fund, and it's a reimbursement, not so we need to expend the funds before we can get the money back. And we need to get approval from the trustees to ensure that it meets the guidelines of the trust fund. With that said, I think the best mechanism right now, until the town has its full policy in place and a application process structured, that we run this through Parks and Rec and then allow them to be the conduit to order the tent, get it delivered, get it set up, and whatever else needs to take place, understanding that there's still two steps. There's another step in the process, which is to get formal approval from the trustees to get the reimbursement. And then we also, so I can make sure that we get this accomplished with or without the percent funding. But I think it's perfectly appropriate to get it reimbursed by the percent through the percent fund based on what I understand the program is.
And I think that it could go through Parks and Rec, and I'm only speaking just as an individual, but then I can say that the trustees do have a meeting for April 8th.
Yep.
And that because Memorial Day is here before we know it, and we, need to be thinking about if we can't get percent, do we need other donations? That if the select board could give tentative approval, if it works with Parks and Rec, that then you would have the opportunity to take it to the trustees on the 8th. And then we would have still almost a month and a half to figure everything out. So it's just that Memorial Day will be here before we know it.
Absolutely. And I'd ask that if the select board is so inclined that they give us consent to proceed with a submittal to the percent fund. We're up to 4,500 to support Memorial Day at Hanover Center as outlined by David Chaffee.
I'll make that motion. What you said.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. And thanks for all that you do around the Memorial Day. Hanover Center, it's a nice occasion, and it's a lovely spot for it, and Nixon Cemetery.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's going to be, so May 26th, Monday, 3 p.m. Everybody is invited.
This won't affect the tax rate either, so you guys don't have to worry about that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
Dave.
Dave.
Thanks for coming out.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Any members of the public who might wish to address the select board? Yes.
I'm actually speaking as a town employee. I'm Adrienne Kudermarsh. You'll have to forgive me because public speaking is not my forte. I mostly have information written down that I would like to share. Because the reason I'm here regarding some information that I don't want to further compromise employee information. But I am here to request that the board make a priority for the town to come up with a policy regarding the sharing of and the storage of sensitive employee personal information. Long story short, I became aware of several weeks ago that some information about several employees and maybe even more was shared that did not need to be, was irrelevant to what it was being shared for. That the town has a duty to protect the person who received it, deleted what was irrelevant, but it's out there. And that makes the town liable, it makes the employees vulnerable. I've made a suggestion that a policy be made, but I'm not confident in it getting done sooner than later. I can elaborate on that more if needed. You know, my email address is the standard for everybody's town email address. I can leave it at that unless you have further questions of me right now. But I would like for the board to support that making a priority. I realize town meeting is really the priority right now, but I think there's a duty to protect employees' information. And unfortunately, I think shouldn't need to have a policy, but I think that's what needs to be done.
Adrienne, thank you for coming forward. Thank you for highlighting this issue. We will follow up. So I'm not sure exactly what form that will be in, but thank you for the suggestion, and sorry to have heard that there was this lapse, and thanks for stepping up.
And I would like to, I have more elaboration on this to give a little more context and some very minor suggestions. I mean, there's a slew of information out there on what typical policies look like, because they're very common for employers.
Is that something you want to leave with us?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That would be fine.
Okay. All right, so I'll hand these out and
Sure.
I'll be on my way.
Okay. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thanks, Adrienne.
We can do that. Okay, thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Yes, and you speak fine, Adrienne. It's
Yeah.
good. Speak well. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the select board this time? Dave?
My name's David Vincelet. I live at 93 Lebanon Street, Hanover. I received a letter dated March 3rd from Rob Hausman. He continues his talk about recycled asphalt, about my driveway blockage. I'm a veteran with an oath of office, spent 25 years in the military. I'm sworn to defend the Constitution. When I know unconstitutional things are happening in Hanover, I have a duty to stand up. 20 years ago, I discovered the dumping of coal tar, contaminated asphalt waste along Old Dana Road and Moose Mountain Road. I called the police to report the asphalt waste. 2 weeks later, in July 2005, we had 100-year rains that washed asphalt waste into Mink Brook, Stores Pond, and our drinking water. Hanover admitted it did an asphalt waste recycling program and that Dartmouth and others contributed to asphalt waste. I know parking lots from the old hospital were sent up to the grinding facility at Guile Road. The town continued dumping asphalt waste, and there was another high erosion event in 2014. DES findings in 2018 documented problems with asphalt waste reaching streams on Moose Mountain where we drew water. Asphalt waste berms at the asphalt dump were not actively maintained, and asphalt flowed freely down over the bank. Sidewalk construction on Route 120 asphalt waste was thrown downhill from the project towards Mink Brook. Now, Mr. Houseman talks about the use of the material. He says the use of RAP in road and sidewalk construction complies with New Hampshire's solid waste rules. That is not what this letter finds. The man who wrote this letter from DES, Keith Dubois, took my complaint. He says, I drove with Mr. Vincelette to a turnout located along a portion of Moose Mountain Road where the grade levels out and a brook is located immediately adjacent to the road to inspect conditions related to the erosion of RAP in the upslope areas of the road. Inspection of the brook indicated the presence of a large amount of asphalt RAP in the brook sediment. The RAP is readily identifiable if you dig into the sediment with your hands. This portion of the brook appears to have been heavily impacted by erosion and the deposition of eroded RAP. Removal of the accumulated RAP would likely cause significant ecological harm. New Hampshire DES recommends consideration of installation of wattles or other erosion control features to minimize the erosion of road-based materials and the deposition of these materials in the brook. So he didn't find that it was what the town was doing with roads and sidewalks was all right. He also, I took him to showed him the facility at Guile Hill. So facility consists of an upper area and a lower area. These areas of asphalt placement are generally surrounded with berms. However, past operations appear to have resulted in pushing a significant volume of asphalt over the berms and down the slope. So Mr. Houseman earlier had given me or led you to believe that a 2005 letter that said the town had a permit to dump this stuff, as if there was no problem. But I consider asphalt waste in our water a problem. I consider it a constitutional problem. Life, liberty, and student happiness, we're not supposed to have poison fed into our water. And I've been coming to you for 20 years since I discovered they were dumping this stuff. And I still can't get straight answers to simple questions. I asked earlier who authorized the dumping of this material, and you came back and said it was a town manager and a guy from Public Works Department, but you didn't actually give me any names. I'd like to know how the public was notified that this material was going to be put down on the roads. And I'd like to know when Hanover will admit to polluting local waterways. Now, Mr. Houseman, in addition to covering up for what the highway department has done, is covering up the fact that he held us for 2 years illegally in violation of our constitutional rights.
Any other members of the public who wish to address the select board at this time? Okay. Seeing none, we will work with our reordered agenda, meaning we will now turn to the discussion of the budget prior to entering the public hearing.
Before we kick this off, I'd like to extend my thanks to Ellen and the staff for working on coming up with options available for your consideration in my absence. They did a heavy lift on this issue, and I'm grateful for that. I'd like to turn it over to Ellen. I do want to say that the proposed cuts to the budget show that the zero-based budgeting process worked, in my opinion, and that I'm not an advocate of imposing those cuts at this time. With that, I'd ask Ellen to proceed with an overview of the options available.
Thank you. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the Finance Committee. We have Greg Snyder, Don Dolan, and Kari, former member, but
Emeritus.
Emeritus. So thank you for coming out.
Of council.
America.
Let me just add select board thanks to Ellen and staff and all department heads. This is a big undertaking, and I know on turnaround you came up with a number of options for the select board to consider. Thank you.
And again, I'll turn it to the departments who really did do a thoughtful job of looking at taking one more look at their budget and this is their contribution. I'm the consolidating point. So again, after last meeting on the 10th, where we looked at a general fund budget that would result in a 5.2 to 5.3% tax rate increase. We were asked to come up with some scenarios to be considered. And tonight we're taking a look at 4 different scenarios. They're a little bit hard to see up there. Let me see if I can increase that size. So I'm just going to quickly go through. The first was to take a look at just a very straightforward option of how we might bring that tax rate increase in line with inflation. We need to define a measure of inflation. So this is reflecting the February Northeast CPIU, which came in at 3.9%. The first 2 scenarios bring in the tax rate increase at 3.8%. The first option is taking a look at applying $200,000 of the undesignated fund balance, simply to buy down the tax rate. So we are shifting the revenue from the tax levy and drawing that from the undesignated fund balance. And again, at $200,000, that brings us to a tax rate of 3.8%. The second scenario really came out of a conversation with the Finance Committee and sort of talking about the intent and the guidance that is provided by the Select Board document on the undesignated fund balance. And this is where we're taking a look at the stormwater study that is in the DPW budget. It's for fiscal year 26 is $190,000. And if we identify that as a one-time item to be covered by the undesignated fund balance, it has a similar impact, really the same impact on the tax rate, bringing it down to 3.8%. The third scenario that we took a look at was discontinuing the curbside recycling program. And in the fiscal year 26 budget, that's budgeted at $292,000 and change. So that's now, you can see in this document, I've sort of highlighted the categories where we're impacting. And you'll see now that would result in a decrease in appropriations and an offsetting decrease in the tax levy. Under that scenario, the overall tax rate increase is 3%. And then the fourth scenario is where we did isolate and identify and accumulate the opportunities for reductions in department budgets. And those reductions total just under $82,000. And in isolation, taking that amount out of the appropriations, we would end up with a 4.7% tax tax rate increase.
Ellen, could you explain, I don't understand how 1 and 2 are different, because it's basically 200,000 to bring down the tax rate.
You know, I think it's, the dollars are the same and the calculation is the same. But I think the process and the sort of identification of a one-time expense that has been the policy for usage of fund balance, I think presents it differently. I think you're absolutely
Sure.
right. In the end, the math works out to be the same.
And I understand philosophically they're different, but it's really just moving $200,000 around.
Correct. Yes, as a matter of fact, if you know, when I put together the undesignated fund balance calculations, on one of them, it's 200,000, you know, noted as a return undesignated fund balance to the taxpayers, and the other is the stormwater study.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Questions around the options?
Well, I think it's premature to cancel recycling at this time. So I would say option 3 is not a viable cost saving measure. I think we need more data. I think we may end up there in a year, but that work is ongoing with sustainability and DPW. And I think it's not something that we should tackle in the next week. I think we need more data before we pull recycling. So I think that's not a good idea.
I have 100% ownership of that recommendation. It came while I was on vacation and trying to give suggestions to staff. And Ellen took me at my word, and rightly so, when I said, we can always propose recycling.
Oh, no, and we've discussed it here before, but I think that we're on a path to do a more thorough assessment and maybe bring that to the voters next year. But I think we need to have more data, and I think that the repercussions are not something that we should. I don't think we should tackle that until we have more information. So that particular one, I would not.
Yeah, I would concur. We should have a thoughtful, if we don't do this, what would we do instead? And it needs to be a little bit more of a dialogue with the community, because it's a meaningful change for a lot of people.
But I am in favor of reductions in the budget towards CPI at some point. How we get there is up for discussion.
And I kind of disagree with what you're saying, but like I wonder if we should present that to the voters or have more of a discussion. I mean, I realize the timeline is short.
We're talking about recycling?
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we are. I don't feel like the recycling program is very honest with the users.
Yep.
I think most people assume that everything that they put in the recycling bin is actually getting recycled. I think what we learned, although rough data, is only about 3 or 4% of it is actually getting recycled.
Yep.
And we're paying 4 times more to have 97% of our stuff just go into the trash. I agree. I totally agree with both of you, but I also feel like.
But I haven't seen the data that says 3 to 4% is being recycled. So that, I mean, if that actually exists, then I think we can make a more informed discussion. I was under the impression that the town of Hanover was working with the city of Lebanon and other areas to clean the trash data from Casella and from the city. So I don't, if you have.
I don't, but that's.
Data,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that, you know, we can do much better than we are doing right now. But I don't know how bad it is. And so before we remove it completely from service that we provide, like better.
It's the plastic. It's not the box board and not the metal, it's the plastic. That's not being done with.
I guess my question is about just, we always have to balance what we're doing now and how we're thinking about the future. And from sitting on the Capital Improvement Program Committee, I think we have a good sense that we have a lot of projects coming up in the future, a lot of which we haven't saved anything for, some of which date back a long time. And when we're making that balance, it strikes me that we should maybe be putting some away. Like, we know that these big things are coming up, and it might be a lot smoother for the tax rate if we start saving for them now. And so that's where I see we did a lot to like work, and I appreciate all this work doing, but I just am concerned that we're sort of passing that forward when we have an opportunity to put money away for projects that we know are coming that are very important to the town. Just like thinking about this infrastructure as a multi-generational investment, and some of it really needed. I mean, we've talked about just right here in this building, having enough space. But this is not an advocacy for any particular project, just looking at the big picture. And where, in the past, we've chosen to cut the tax rate significantly in recent years. And like very recently, we were above inflation. But not too long ago, we were cutting it pretty dramatically. And that's leaving us maybe not having put away money for things that we know are coming up.
So with respect to the addition to the CRFs, is that issue is somewhat related to how do we use the undesignated fund balance? And so do you want to maybe turn to that? Unless there are other questions around options here.
And I'd just like to make sure that everyone does understand that the $1.5 million of the use of the fund balance is included in all of these numbers. So that set aside of $1.5 million to the building capital reserve fund or the new capital reserve fund, they are embedded in these numbers. So, and the capacity of the undesignated fund balance to spend $200 or allocate $190,000, the capacity is there. I did add at the bottom of this sort of where the undesignated fund balance lands under each of these scenarios. So you can see that, again, with that $1.5 million taken or deposited into the capital reserve funds in scenario 1 and 2 were just below 16%. The third and fourth scenarios were not using fund balance beyond the $1.5 million, along with the other items that we've already noted. So we're at about 17%.
So just Jenny, in relation to your comment that we are adding $1.5 million beyond what the CIPC requested, and it's kind of a windfall, if you will. But that is additional to what was originally planned. Now, we also have some emerging needs, which there's more in the select board packet about that relative to building needs. So.
If we're going to move on, my recommendation, if I could, would be to advocate for the stormwater be funded by the undesignated.
And it is kind of semantics.
It is, but I, what you label it as, right?
It's really the same.
You're funding a one-time project.
I understand, but you're also funding a one-time reduction in tax rate. Which is gonna come back to bite us in the future.
Right, that's my worry.
Yeah, I understand.
But if the stormwater is truly a one-time,
Yeah.
then.
Well, no, I just, to Athos's comment, that like the,
Yeah.
you know, the total increase in proposed expenditures was 10.7, right?
And I have to say that you'll see on this spreadsheet that I'm displaying, it actually is at 11.2 because I have adjusted the expenditure from the Brissette Fund to include, and we may have to tweak that a little bit, and it's an in and out, but we had discussed basically shifting the allocation for fiscal year 25 into 26. So that doesn't have an impact on the tax rate. That 11.2% is highly impacted by the $1.5 million that's going into the, you know, use of fund balance. So it's an expenditure because it's a deposit into the capital reserve fund.
Right.
It's not impacting the tax rate. So that has a very large impact, as well as the other uses of fund balance that we have, the $200,000 for the planning and zoning project. So if you take those out of the increase, it's more in the 5% range. So
The 5%.
yes, so this is it.
Well, I mean, the percent fund's 300,000, right?
360.
360, which is, that also adds to $1.5 million.
So
That's why it's at 11.2
Correct.
versus. So it's like two numbers.
It is, and that's why the overall increase in the appropriations for the general fund is 11.2%, but we're looking at a tax rate increase, depending on which one we look at, between 3.8 and 5%. So that's, and capital expenditures often, you know, swing those percentages, but in this case, with $1.5 million proposed deposit, it really has a huge impact on the.
And I agree with Terry that we should be looking at these emerging needs to make sure we're not, shorthanding us in the future and getting caught in the rears.
Okay, I'm gonna open this up to members of the public and finance committee members. All right, could you?
I'll let the, yes, finance committee member should go first.
We have some more specific comments to make. Greg Snyder, Chair of the Finance Committee.
Just 1 second, Greg.
Zoom logistics.
There we
go. Okay, all right. Gotta get you on camera.
The Finance Committee will fulfill its responsibility for advising the town on financial matters, including the proposed budget, by issuing its annual statement for town meeting. We'll do so in part by reviewing all the items brought forward in last year's statement and comment on how each item has been addressed. This will be a detailed statement to be issued within the next couple of weeks. For tonight, I can make a general statement on behalf of the committee that the process for developing the proposed budget to date has been exemplary. Ellen has attended our meetings regularly, and Rob has also more than once. This, and with the always added value provided by our select board representative, Carrie Callahan, has, and I can say without hesitation, been a truly collaborative process, enabling a much greater level of confidence by the committee on the town's finances. We know there is still work to be done, and we will take a sharp pencil approach to our upcoming formal advice. But we want to applaud the progress achieved this year at this meeting so that the select board and public recognize our appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for all the work that Finance Committee does. Other comments?
Very hazardous, just speaking as an individual, but I have to say, I thought I wouldn't pay attention to the budget at all this year. But then I needed to watch the March 10th meeting because of trustee stuff. And well, I got a little bit hooked by your conversation. I thought that it was a great conversation that you had on the 10th, where you really talked about the pros and cons of using the undesignated fund balance, the best uses. And I thought that was probably, the best discussion that I'd heard about that, in years. But I have to say it brought many of my own thoughts to mind. And I've had an opportunity for many years to read the guidelines that, as Athos pointed out, these are guidelines, they're not set in stone, you have flexibility. But I thought that it was important to remind you in this important distinction between using one-time monies for one-time things versus using one-time monies for operating costs, which our town manager pointed out the last time. What you do when you do that is you buy yourself heartburn in the following year. That I think is really important. So I personally would encourage you to think about using it for the stormwater, just to give yourself that discipline. But the guidelines themselves say that the funds are intended to fund expenses that are non-recurring and should not be built into the tax rate. And really when these were adopted in 2015, so 10 years ago, the thought was that you have these one-time expenses and you put them into the budget. And so that raises your spending. The next year, that one-time expense goes away. And so all of these recurring expenses fill that spending capacity. And then as the board, you say, well, we're just increasing the expenditures by the sort of the rate of inflation or the tax rate. But actually it's more, because you're using these one-time costs as well as adding. And so to the extent that you can use responsibly the undesignated fund balance to pay for one-time costs, you're following your guidelines that I think Joanna and Athos can both say how many meetings you took, how many months you took to come up with these. So it's really, I really encourage you all to read it. And again, their guidelines. And I see, that you're taking this balanced approach where you do kind of have this windfall this year of $1.5 million. It is unprecedented that you're taking that amount of money and putting it into capital reserve funds. So you're making a huge step forward in that area. I have to say, I listened to Athos said, but it's really supposed to be for current taxpayers, not future taxpayers that benefit from that. And this guideline says that it should be returned within 2 or 3 years. So if you put it in capital reserve funds, but you know that you're going to need it in the 2 or 3 coming years, you're being consistent with the guidelines, and it's a separate warrant article. So you're actually asking people, do you want to do this? And they can say yes or no. So I guess I just want to say that I feel that you've hit a very good balance here. And to the extent that some of you may feel an additional need to lower the anticipated increase in the tax rate, I would suggest that you look to see if there are any other one-time expenses in the budget. I know that this coming year, you're having the revaluation. In the past, the revaluation costs were considered a one-time expense because you don't do that 2 years in a row. And I'm trying to think, it was in 18 when there was additional undesignated fund balance that was used for the revaluation costs of about $118,000. I haven't seen that part of the budget, so I don't know if that's possible. But if there were any additional one-time costs, that would be, appropriate, and that would be another place to bring down the tax rate rather than, thinking about, can we take $10,000 a year or $5,000 here, et cetera. those are just thoughts that I had sitting at home. And again, I encourage you to continue this balanced approach. I guess the one last question that I had was that I think that it, given that, like in the past 25 years, we've used the undesignated fund balance on an emergency basis twice. And that if you take it down to the 15%, that you're being responsible. I believe last meeting, Ellen said that where it was now, there was $358,000 basically that you had to take it down to 15%. Stormwater is 190,000. So what does that leave? 160 or something. So I don't know if there's another $160,000 of one-time costs if you feel the need to take it down further. Although what Ellen is talking about with either the first two does bring it down to the increase to inflation. 3.8 is under 3.9. But that additional 160, and I have to say the only other question that I had, though, then my countervailing voice is the overlay that you have considering the revaluation sufficient? Because it's being increased from 100,000 to 200,000. I went back and looked how much, have we used, and the overlay also is supposed to contain the amount that we pay for the veterans credits every year, which is, $55,000, $60,000. So if it's $200,000 and 60,000 of it is going for the credits, that leaves 140,000. And is that really enough for the abatements? And I don't know the answer to that, but I would say that in previous years, we've needed more.
And I will just say, and I think on magnitude, it may not change the conversation, but the veterans credits actually are on a different line.
Oh, you've separated them out.
Yeah.
Okay, because
So that's
previously
not
that 200 covered both. So, okay. So I don't know, the 18 revaluation, one year we had almost 700,000 in abatements.
We hope that was an anomaly.
Yes, right, but still 200 is, I would say, not even half. And inflation, the numbers of abatements are getting bigger. So that would be just, my one question is, are you thinking if you feel that you need to go down, you have the undesignated fund balance, there are probably some one-time costs, but are you sure that you have set aside enough for abatements? And again, abatements are sort of one-time, maybe a one-time thing because of the revaluation. That would be another use for the undesignated fund balance. But obviously our staff maybe has a better idea of what's needed there. So anyway, thank you. I just couldn't help myself.
Thank you. Good observations. Does raise some other avenues if the select board wants to entertain, anything more tax rate or capital reserve funds or. So there are a few avenues we can go down, but don't know the extent to which there's appetite to change that. Let's go back to it sounds like we are centering on additional use of fund balance for the stormwater study. I think I'm hearing that pretty consistently, $1.5 million into undesignated, into capital reserve funds. Any thoughts from select board members around that? Does that sound like where we're at?
Yeah, I would ask, we did add more as Kari had, I think we added more for tax abatements.
We doubled it.
We
It was
doubled.
100,000 and we have increased it to 200. In the reval that took place after 18, it is the example that I would fall back on as to the process that we'll go through again this cycle. We will give notice in July or early August to all property taxpayers
Versus November.
as a draft so that they can work through with our assessor any current concerns they have in preparation for the issuance of the November any abatements that would be requested would be due by, for that bill would be due by February. So it would hit the 26 budget, but I would not advocate for a doubling of that number. Speaking to the process, we now do it completely in-house. Norm has structured the department in such a way that we have the in-house capacity to do the full revalve in-house, so there is no additional cost.
It's actually part of our training.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, Rob, you're saying you feel that the overlay is sufficient at 200.
We're hoping for that.
Yeah.
I tell you, those of us on that advisory board of it, whatever it is, are hoping that it's less than 200. So went through a lot of.
The whole purpose of that July cycle, that July-August cycle, is to make sure that we vetted the numbers correctly
With the property owners.
with the property.
In 2018, bills went out in November. There was no vetting in advance. And so we had over 400 abatement hearings.
And there was a lot of stuff.
I was part of it.
Yeah, I know, it was
taxes
bad.
went up like 40% or something.
Just back.
To the extent that there was need for more overlay, that can come out of undesignated fund balance. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So leaving it there gives us some cushion. Yes.
I think that 1.5 towards the reserves is a really great start. I think we have a lot of things that we've known about for a long time that we haven't saved any money for. So I would ask, is there anything else we could do now? I'm maybe not as attached to pegging things to an inflation rate because I just don't see that history in our town. Sometimes we're above, sometimes we're below, sometimes we're 10% below when inflation's been going up. So I feel like we did take these big cuts in previous years, in 2018, 2021. And now maybe we do have to start paying ourselves back, like making sure we're ready. Just so that we can keep things more steady in the future. I know I gave the CIPC talk this time. We didn't have the gravitas of Gondolin. There are big things coming. That's my message.
Jenny, as part of the budget process, there always has been discussion with respect to what the select board thinks. There's always been sensitivity to what the taxpayers can pay,
Yes.
what they're going through, what the economy is doing. One measure of that, not a good one, but one measure of that is the CPI. It's, you know all the details of it. It's not perfect. We've also done as much as we can in the past to look at everything else. For example, what cars people are buying, meaning we have the data on the car registration and how expensive cars people are buying. We've looked
Our
at,
registration's up
right.
dramatically this year.
We've looked at other things as well. But we've always been very sensitive to CPI. You're absolutely correct. There have been constraints in many years where we've been significantly above inflation. We've also had a couple of years, believe it or not, and I don't remember them, but where we've been below inflation, but pretty significantly now as well. So we've always, the argument has always been there that CPI is not a good measure in and of itself.
It's not the only measure.
It's not the only measure, yeah.
Right.
But it's always been paid attention to. It's never been.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back to in the fall when Alan was like, I heard you guys don't want 7%. And, we started off on the zero-based budgeting and we just heard how seriously they took that. And when they went back to try to cut the fat, there really isn't any fat, right? So, and we all know that most of our expenses are people and specifically that healthcare costs have gone up dramatically. So I just think like if we're thinking about, we're thinking about what we're operating with today, but we need to be thinking about what we're going to need in the future. And I know we've had, harder times during the pandemic specifically, where we dropped the tax rate rather than increase the tax rate. You know, we dropped it 10%. 2018, we dropped it 11%. Those are big drops. So I just want to be mindful that while we're having maybe, you know, banner car registrations, we still have, aside from eggs and steel, some lower inflation rates historically. We should be thinking about what we can do to prepare for the future.
So I'll just venture to say, I think we're in an unusual situation with respect to capital budgeting. We have a $1.5 million we're putting in. This is not the normal process we would have used. We would have been very deliberative about this project, that project, et cetera. In this case, we recognize the need. I think we feel strongly based on the data that Art, et cetera, has put together. Plus, I think a lot that wasn't in that study, that this money will be spent in various ways. So I don't think there's any question about need. But to add more, to say, let's bump up the tax rate a couple % to put money in.
Well, it's more like, let's embrace the tax rate that I thought was reasonable, that the town staff came up with, when they originally presented it. So they presented, you know, an increase of a little over 5%, right?
Yep, with zero-based budgeting.
Right.
With zero-based budgeting, and I'm like, wow, that's great. I didn't have that same like, oh no, we need to be at inflation. Like that wasn't my, just given where I think people are right now and what I see as critical need to invest in our future.
I think zero-based budgeting is interesting. But I also think part of the job of the select board is to set guidelines. And just because we have a number doesn't mean that that's the appropriate number.
Athos, I would agree with you there that, you know, I think when you have to set your own budget and fight for it, you have a tendency to ask for as much as you can get. Not to say, I don't say that in a bad way or mean to say that the department heads are inflating or anything like that, but I've been through this many times where, you know, you propose a budget and you hope that it gets through, and ideally everything you're asking for gets funded, but sometimes it can't. And I agree that it is our duty to take a really hard look at that and you know, understand that the department heads are representing their departments. We are also representing them and their departments, but we're also representing the taxpayers, and we are the voice for the taxpayers. So I think we have a duty to make sure that we're doing this responsibly. And then I'm gonna kind of transition into my just next kind of thoughts as we move forward in this conversation. You know, I think our policy is 10 to 15% for the undesignated fund balance. Being at 15% is the top of our policy. We're above that, even with these. I would love to see us get to 15%. And, you know, looks like option 2 is kind of where everybody is headed. And continue to bring down the tax rate to get us to a 15% undesignated fund balance. So it's just, you know, I can't do the math because I'm probably the dumbest one in the room, but that 0.92%, so 15.92, if we can get that to 15% and bring down that tax rate. Additionally, the curbside recycling, I hear you, and I you know, respect all you guys and your desire to not do that now. And I will agree with you, but I think it's something that we should prioritize as we go. Absolutely. You know, past town meeting. And if it's something that we find is not in the best interest of the taxpayers, then we should do everything we can to eliminate it as soon as we can and replace it. And then if we are, if that leads to another 292,000, then that will go to next year's undesignated fund balance, and we'll have this conversation again.
I think we do have a contract through next year.
Actually, the contract expires July 1. We're looking to secure a 1-year contract.
Oh, I had it. Oh, okay.
We're working with vital communities in the 5 regional towns, including Lebanon, Hartford, Norwich, to Enfield and others to address this issue as we speak. Pete attended a meeting in my absence on the 18th, and we're trying to come up with solutions.
So
So I would concur with you, like if we can come up with a solution that we're not paying $290,000 for recycling, that we're not getting recycled. I think we have to communicate that, but
Absolutely.
we have to.
Oh, it's gonna be a PR nightmare too.
I shouldn't have put it on the table. I apologize.
No, we talked about it last year.
We talked about this for a decade. No, no.
Sustainable Hanover's talking about it, yeah.
It's like not working perhaps as should be.
Yeah, no, Rob,
And they don't, and that the transfer station is sorted, like you sort it. So.
No, I meant that I shouldn't have put it on there without having all the data to support our solution.
Okay. But it's been out there for
Yeah.
15 years.
We'll bring
You
it,
can never have all the data.
we'll bring it to closure for you.
Can I just jump in and, so the additional capacity in the undesignated fund balance to bring it down to 15% is $168,000? If that is, if we identify other one-time items for $168,000 and allocate that, the tax rate increase would be 2.5%.
So is the digitization project a candidate for that categorization?
It's already in here.
It's already in
Correct.
It's already in there as a one-time.
It's a,
Correct. It's a use of fund balance.
So the increase of the overlay from 100,000 to 200,000, that $100,000 could be considered a one-time. So there's $100,000. And I think I did hear that for the revaluation that there was a request for maybe $10,000 for a peer review. That is a one-time cost. So that would be 110,000. I don't know, the planning and zoning budget isn't anywhere on the web, so I don't know anything about that budget, but I know in the past that there have sometimes been one-time consulting, but then there's often another consulting project the next year. But I don't know if there's any one-time consulting fee someplace else. But
There isn't parking, but I don't know if.
it doesn't count. It has to be
What
general
about,
fund.
But what
about
if,
the
but what if
TIF?
we funded the parking consulting and then increase the amount that parking is contributing to the general fund?
I don't know how you would accomplish that unless you have, the only way you could accomplish that would be to lower the captured net assessed valuation, and that would require another warrant article, I guess, at town meeting. So there's really not a great way to get money from the parking fund to the general fund.
But if we're happy with 100,
well, we just identified 190 for the stormwater, 110 for the overlay and the peer review. So we're at 300,000. So
And that
pretty
would
darn
bring,
good.
that would bring the rate to 3%.
3%, and you would be at just over a little of 15%,
Correct.
which I can live with.
yes.
And your taxes are going up 3%, plus you're getting a reval. So some people's taxes won't go up. Right?
And I think there is cause for a little conservatism going into this year because there are going to be dislocations from federal, state that are going to cascade down to us.
Can you live with that?
Yes, I can live with that. Thank you.
No, I mean, this is a really good discussion. I think
It's a good
it's.
discussion.
I
think
guess
it's good.
my question would be, why would we buy down the tax rate than say on the reservoir, like road, shared use path that's been on, that was proposed in 2015, but saving, just a couple $1,000s a year is like not quite getting. Like
Is that in our CIPC?
for FY27, it's just been there for a long time. And it's been there since the Safe Routes to School plan,
But it's not.
right?
Well,
And
those
then
are just,
yeah.
those are ideas.
Yeah, and then it turned into a project. These are real projects and real needs that we get asked about that will lead to sort of the triple bottom line, like, fiscally responsible, cost less to maintain than roads, allows, equity, allows people to move around independently and is more sustainable.
Right.
Like that kind of acceleration towards basically less cost intensive infrastructure and less carbon intensive infrastructure is a type of shift that we're looking for in our sustainability master plan to make sure that people aren't paying in the future, both dollars and through the destruction of the planet while making it more equitable. That's it's a really long time to wait for a cycle. And it's because we've had these big cuts in 2018, we decreased the tax rate, not by 1%, 2%, 3%, by 11%, right? We decreased the tax rate in big chunks in the past.
I don't remember noticing that in my tax bill.
So, thank you, Jenny. That's a big conversation.
Well, it's actually, I did raise it last week.
Yep.
The last time we discussed this, I said, why don't we think about not just buying down the tax rate? Why don't we think about investing in these future projects that we already have identified, some of which have zero funding source, even though we've known about them for many, many years, right? Like, and then when we consider them, it's difficult to consider them and say, hey, do this, because there's no money saved for them, right?
So I'll speak for myself. I feel a little reluctant to go down the road of which we've already entered into of doing capital planning, project funding, kind of.
Right. I think I came at this like, I don't have I'm happy to fund the stormwater study. I'm not coming at this with like, we need like a specific project that we should study. I'm coming at this with, we know we have lots of future expenses, and we know that that will either lead towards not investing in our town the way we've envisioned, or having a more erratic tax rate in the future. So that's where I see the choice being.
Right.
Like, they're not going away. These projects are not, I mean, they can go away, but then our town will be different than what we're thinking of. We're just passing the buck to some future generation in multiple dimensions.
I mean, there's also affordability and who gets to live in Hanover, and so that's also part of the conversation in terms of taxes. So it's an element also we have to consider.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is when you have an undesignated fund balance that's high, we've overtaxed public. And the whole concept is to make amends in that regard. We didn't do it intentionally.
Yeah.
It's just the way it turned out. And I agree with you, flattening out the tax rate over the next 20 years would be the best.
But it doesn't,
So
mean,
some-
since we have a higher undesignated fund balance, it doesn't mean we just go out and spend money. Right? Our responsibility is to give it back to the taxpayer. And I.
Or
I guess
invest
the
in
question
it.
is like, how do you think of it as giving it back to the taxpayers? I think, Karen was saying like, if we give it back and like a study that we need, the taxpayers in the next couple of years are using it, will benefit from having a stormwater study. If we, build some of the solar panels that are in the future, if we build them now rather than in the future, we would start making that energy now. That would be helping all of us now, right? That would be lowering our energy costs as soon as we got them built. But right now they're scheduled out, right? And we could go on. If we redid the building envelope at the house, we would be adding insulation, which we know is like the most cost-efficient way to lower energy. We could be doing that now, or we could just put that off in the future. Like, all of these projects are like this, or we could build that, the walking path, like to let people walk along Reservoir Road in a certain way, would let people move around now. That's like a service it's giving them now. Like we collected this money because we had this idea, right, that we're gonna provide services for people. And some places like walking paths, there's opportunities to provide service to more people than we provide right now. That it's like less equitable than it could be. Because certain people can't move around as easily as other people, right? So in that way, it is giving people. It's not pulling projects that we're not talking about. I'm just saying we have a whole bunch of projects.
I get it, Jenny. I
So
get it.
it's
And I totally agree with you in investing in the future and making these good investments that we've all agreed on. But I also think that, the tax burden's high. It is. It's just, this is an expensive place to live. And we are in a fortunate situation where we have a high undesignated fund balance. And we have a policy that says that where that should be and what we should do with it. And I agree with Carrie in that we shouldn't at this hour be making capital improvement decisions. And we need to make a decision on the tax rate for next year. And I think we have a really good solution going forward. I don't think we're losing anything or taking anything away. We're in a really good position and we are acting responsibly
You're
by.
not doing the stormwater.
What's that?
No, we are.
No, we are. I'm saying the
Improvement. That's a
like
capital improvement.
the sidewalk and
That's-
this other stuff you're bringing up.
I think the focus on the tax rate in relation to the inflation rate is appropriate. Because I just want to remind you that we had a chart in our statement last year that got quite a bit of attention from the public, where we were outstripping the inflation rate by a lot over a long period of time. And so by bringing the tax rate down and having the undesignated fund be as close to 15% as you can do, and do that on the basis of one-time money on one-time costs, that would be something that we support.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Yeah, I think your points are very well taken, and we are going to be spending a lot of time, including later in this meeting, talking about big capital projects. So, so there's a lot to come there, and we're making, I think, a big contribution to our capital reserve funds, which is fortuitous, but I think it's a big win. So, could it be 100 or 200,000 more? Yes, but we need to balance that against the tax rate. And in the scheme of the capital spending, that's small, but I understand every dollar counts, but so too do the tax rates. So, okay, thank you. All right. I'm getting the sense that maybe we're moving toward a 3% tax rate, 100,000 to overlay. 3%, is that right?
So the 3% would be if we utilized $100,000 of one-time money to offset the increase in the overlay, and the 10,000 for the peer review for assessing. So in total, that additional use of fund balance would result in a 3% tax rate increase.
And stormwater would also come out. of
And
that.
stormwater,
So
yes,
a
all the
total
other
of
things that were
300,000 would come out of undesignated and would just be a little above 15%.
correct. It would be 15.32.
Okay. Thank you for working with me on this case.
Is everyone on board with that? Can everyone live with that?
I mean, I disagree with this, but that's fine. You guys will still pass.
Okay.
Yeah, I really do think it's a great step forward to put that 1.5 million towards a capital improvement right now, and I would put more. I think we're underinvested in the future.
Noted. Thank you. Do we want to talk about other aspects of the budget, Ellen, or where do we need to be?
May I?
Yes, please.
I think Ellen's given an excellent overview, and unless you want to dive into the minutia of the impact on the tax rate itself as a percent of the overall tax rate, I think we should move on.
I will though, sorry. Note that when you blend in the fire, it probably comes down a little bit, even off the 3%.
I can
So,
really quickly pop that up because one of the scenarios, was a 3% rate increase. So I happen to have it modeled. Wait, I need to get back to Zoom. Where am I? I'll just
Says high tech.
share it. So this is the tax rate increase. This is where top line, you'll see that this is the 3% in the municipal tax rate.
Yeah.
And so overall, excluding the fire districts, that would be blended with, and again, I'm just going to call out that I've made a high level assumption that the county tax will increase by 3.5%, no control over that. So overall, the municipal tax for the tax rate would be 3.8% when you blend in the fire district increases. Overall, the blended tax rate increase will be 3.7%.
all in fire and everything else.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Terrific. Thank you. All right. So we have not entered the public hearing, which we would presumably do if we're going to pass this. Anything else before we went into the public hearing? Do you want to? There's a lot of material in there from Art, et cetera. I don't think we necessarily need to go through that.
That's separate from bigger discussion.
Yep. Any further members from the public who might wish to address the select board before we move into public hearing? Kari.
Yeah, so, as somebody who only this weekend, like I said, thought, I want to learn about the budget. I found that it really wasn't online anywhere. That, I think that spreading it out over a number of meetings is a huge improvement. But the first budgets that were heard on January 6th, which were a lot of them, that wasn't included in the packet and it was never added online anywhere. So those budgets are just completely missing from the public view. And then I would say that it's not terribly convenient to have to go through, 100-page packet to find the, public works budget. So you have to go to many different places and it's just spread out all over the place. And that's, I don't think, really ideal for, if it's there at all.
Yes. Yeah.
I agree. The 24 one, the 24 dashboard is like very convenient, but when you look up, the town tax stuff, you find 24 and you're like, all right, this isn't very helpful.
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
Yeah, so, and there might be some in between dashboards and missing things altogether. That would be my
All right.
comment.
Yeah, okay. So is that, I'll just turn to Al and Rob, is there some way we can aggregate the budget presentations?
We'll create a landing page on the town manager's homepage.
Okay.
And put them up. I'll note that once we go to board docs, it'll be searchable. And by topic, it won't have to, we are transferring over to board docs shortly, similar to the school board. And that structure will allow you to view those in real time.
But if we approve the budget tonight, it will be important to have.
We'll get everything up.
Compiled budget posted.
Yep.
And I would suggest that we sort of start with, the summary document that we looked at for the general fund, and then we'll have all of the budgets behind it. We have it organized in PDF, so they can not only be viewed, by page, but also can be printed for anyone who would like to do that.
Excellent.
Okay. To move into public hearing. Just declare. What are we doing? Public hearing for the budget.
What did we just do?
We never actually entered into public.
We should have.
Yes, well, we are about to take action. Okay, so we are moving into public. We don't need a motion.
No, you don't. You can just open it. You
Okay,
just open it.
This is the public hearing for the fiscal year 26 budget, which we have discussed. We are now going to take action. And we will need a motion.
Well, wait,
Yes.
now we've got the public hearing, so we have to hear from the public.
That's true. Okay, you're right, you're right.
Any further?
The public
Any
might-
further comments from the
might
public?
wish to discuss the budget at this point. All right. Seeing.
John does.
John.
Good work, everybody. Take yes for an answer.
Yes, thank you. All right, so,
Carrie, I'm sorry, I thought we were in the public hearing.
no. So,
Maybe we should retroactively open it for like 7 o'clock.
Because they move on. Could be perceived as.
I did get a couple of emails, but that's not really public. No.
Well, you're representing the public, you can summarize.
Yeah.
Okay, so I won't use the person's name, but they just emailed to say thank you for voicing concern over the increase. They were thanking me for not wanting to increase it. It's not sustainable to allow these taxes to continue to rise more than inflation. It won't have a positive effect to continuously increase the tax rate. And then they talked about some of the investments in the multi-use path into Station Village, that they were not a proponent of that. And some of those connections between, I guess, us and West Lebanon, they felt shouldn't be on the taxpayers, should be on Dartmouth's dime or somebody else's dime. And then I got another email from a local business owner, and basically let me just pull this up real fast. I sent out an email to the local businesses explaining kind of the basics of the budget, asking for input. And this person basically felt like there was a lot of economic uncertainty and felt that keeping taxes kind of with inflation is a good practice, but that we should also be investing into our capital reserve funds, just like Jenny's suggesting. And we need to balance both of those things.
okay. So we did get some public input. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate that.
Hey, there were people here speaking.
Well, some additional public input. Public hearing.
Oliver, there, thank you for being here.
No, thank you all. So, we need a motion to approve the fiscal year 26 budget as amended.
How does it have to read, Ralph?
I think Perry just captured it. Move to approve the FY26 budget as amended, reflecting the changes noted by Ellen.
I move to approve the FY26 budget as
As amended.
presented and amended, which is already got it wrong. Why don't you just?
As amended, you
As
got it,
amended.
you got it, that's it, yes, okay, terrific. Second,
I'll second.
Karen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yay. Okay. And we've already set a public hearing for April 7th. Do we need to set another public hearing?
Close that public hearing, by the way.
Do we need to? Okay, all right.
You do that.
I could close the public hearing with respect to the fiscal year 26 budget.
Then
And then you move on.
All right,
we can move to postpone the public hearing that was supposed to happen tonight to April 7th on the TIF, right? So I move that we hold public or postpone tonight's public hearing for the TIF to April 7th.
Second. And that was,
Yeah,
somebody was
we
absent.
scheduled them both, for both, but it's probably good to also postpone it.
maybe redundant, but yeah, okay, all right. Second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Do you want to see employee recognition? There is some.
Certainly, it's customary in the second select board meeting to acknowledge those who've met their employees who've achieved their 5-year anniversary. We have 2 employees to recognize. One is Norm Bernache from assessing, who's in his 5th year. And the second is Jason Goodrich from DPW in his 10th year. I'd like to extend the congratulations and a thank you for their years of service. I do want to recognize that we have many milestones included in the town manager's report, but we do honor those who achieved their 5-year benchmarks. So thanks to everyone, and especially thanks to Norm and Jason.
I would just like to commend the water department and DPW for their work here on Main Street. It was quite a mess for them, and I think they did a great job, not only of working extremely hard and long hours, but also being sensitive to the economic impact to shutting down water to, the street and all the restaurants and businesses that would have had to close. One of them stayed open despite not having water, which is interesting.
It is
Yeah,
not
but
quite.
impressive. But yeah, they did a great job, and I know that the businesses that were affected or would have been affected really appreciate their work.
Thank you for those words. I'll share them with the department.
And I'll just shout out again to the water department because I changed out my water meter, everyone. Everyone should do that. And it took,
It's real fast.
it's real fast.
They're
They
really
said-
nice.
They said they'd be there at 2:15. They were there just a little before 2:15 and they finished their work in no time. Very pleasant. I can now monitor how my water is how much is being used on my app. And so highly recommend everyone doing that.
Thank you.
With respect to the AG architect recommendations and the TIF district, is this the first may not be necessary, the second, do you want to just postpone to the next meeting, or just do you want to touch on it tonight as well?
I just want to explain why the TIF. So let's start with the TIF district. The document's been updated to include cost estimates for South Main Street and to add some detail on section 6K, the provision that explains what's included in the district use. So it is being reviewed by council. She has reviewed it once and felt that it was a good framework and appropriate and consistent with state law. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss anything prior to going to public hearing on it. So that's been updated to reflect her feedback. With regards to AG Architect, I would recommend that given the hour that we postponed the discussion, just acknowledge that the list was received. There's a lot of things coming down the pike as we discussed. It has not been vetted. I want to put that on the table. Oftentimes when this process takes place, we need to understand that the consultant is asking for current needs, 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, and 50-year horizon. So sometimes that list looks huge. And we also have to go through the needs and wants process, which will take place once we get some more feedback from our.
Okay, thank you. So unless there's anything further on that or any questions, we'll move on to business requiring action. Anything else on those two items?
I think the updated 6K, maybe the map should also reflect.
So the district bound.
It's a district bound just about the property.
Yeah, the district boundaries where the values are attached.
Okay. So the map's fine.
The map's fine. The narrative reflects that.
Yeah, I saw that. We didn't know if it was going to be changed.
Further. Business requiring action. First of which is recommendation to set a public hearing on Monday, April 7th at 7 p.m. for the pre-town meeting public hearing, including town meeting warrant.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Like on me.
I'll second it.
Right. Any discussion about that? Thank you, Finance Committee members.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
you.
Any discussion on that before we take it to a vote?
Are we all present that day? I know we've had some discussion on it. Okay, but just one person.
Yeah, everyone else will be here. If we're not, yeah.
What's the date again?
7th of April.
2 weeks.
Okay, so we will move forward.
Sorry, I can't be here.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Approval of fiscal year 26 budget is done. Approval of March 10th select board minutes. Are there any comments with respect to minutes? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the March 10th select board minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of items 1 to 4 by consent. Donations from at the library, donation, Parks and Rec, banner requests, Chad Proudy, Family Care, and the Patient Association Light Pole banner requests, Pat Hero, and England School for the Arts.
I would like to thank Jerry and Pat Bolcom for their $100 gift to the library, and George and Dominique Whitebody for their $250 gift to the library, as well as Marjorie Phillips for her $500 gift to Parks and Recreation for adult fitness classes.
Thank you for those shout outs. Is there a motion?
Remove this consent agenda.
Consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
All right, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Very efficient select board reports. Joanna?
It seems like there were a couple meetings last week. Sustainability committee met on Wednesday after it took us a while to figure out the high tech. It's a big group of people, lots of people very interested in sustainability. Big Earth Day celebration, open house at the Richmond School on April 26th, 12 to 3.
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
Yeah.
In the afternoon. And there's also lots of stuff going on in the Upper Valley. If you go to the City of Lebanon's website and sign up, they'll give you a map of where you can go around and see where there's geothermal wells and solar kennels and EV cars and sustainable gardens and rain gardens and such. Composting, all kinds of good stuff. But there's a lot of new people, a lot of interest in energy, a lot of activity. Everyone's very excited that a sustainability coordinator has been hired. It will be starting next month, I think. So, well, good.
Yeah. And then the school buses,
Oh, yes.
actually the bus company or the school district was awarded electric buses, $600,000 worth of electric buses. 3 out of 8 buses, but since they were only recently accepted, it now looks like they may not be getting those buses.
Because of the current situation in the.
Yeah, because of the timing.
That's the most subtle way to say anything I've ever heard.
The current situation.
The current situation, which couldn't get from, well, it can't get. Probably will.
There are a couple. I'm trying to think of the other meetings. There seemed like there was another meeting that I went to last week, but I can't find any notes. The trustees of trust funds are meeting, as we heard, April 8th here. And I think that's it.
Within the downtown group, we had a parking meeting with some account staff as well as some of the business owners. We talked about the employee parking tags, started kind of talking about progressive metering and tiered pricing as a future project to improve turnover, decrease ticketing, decrease some of the negative effects of ticketing.
What do you mean by tiered pricing?
So instead of just having like 2-hour parking and then after 2 hours you get a ticket, $15 or $30 ticket, it would be 2 hours at a set price, and then you can stay for 3 or 4, but the price would go way up.
So progressive and tiered the same, or is there a different idea there?
Yes, similar. So progressive pricing would be I'm sorry, tiered pricing may not be the right term, but progressive pricing. So again, instead of having just strict limits, the price would go way up. Also looking at trying to reduce ticketing by, instead of giving someone a ticket for an expired meter, we would be able to essentially charge them more on overstaying. So instead of them getting a ticket, having to come to the, go online and pay it or come to the office, they would just get charged more. And again, this is a kind of a pipe dream for us, but the idea is to get away from ticketing and the kind of that razor cut that you experience when you get a ticket for staying too long. But still, again, incentivizing turnover and making people pay for the time that they're there. Sergeant Swain is going to be working on the parking ordinance redraft. I guess a couple of areas have changed in that draft, or that ordinance is somewhat out of date, so he'll be working on that. We had an initial conversation with Desmond, just to, from that business owners group or the business group to look into starting that study, and talk to Andy Hill. He is putting together a proposal that will go to both the downtown group as well as to the town. And then lastly, Andy Hill.
He's a consultant that's been working with Desmond for many years.
Yeah, he was, I sent it to like their info account and he was the one who responded and said that he did the 18 study and then maybe even the one before that. So he was very familiar with Hanover. And then lastly, the downtown Wi-Fi, as it relates to parking, the idea is that we have more Wi-Fi coverage. So in those areas where you can't pay for parking because you don't have cell phone coverage, we're trying to get Wi-Fi to those places as well as just have free Wi-Fi in downtown. And Dartmouth has really done the lion's share of work, and we appreciate their collaboration on this project. And it's live right now, right here in front of Town Hall, and more of these access points will be coming online in the coming months.
Finance Committee met last Thursday. Alan was in attendance. Thank you, Alan. And we'll meet again this Thursday. Topics in both cases was really down budget, which we got through tonight. So that's for the office.
Conservation Commission met, I missed it, and we.
Yeah, they, their March 26th is a public hearing about the headwaters purchase for 15,000. So I guess that's in 2 days. They were, Alex Todd shared with them the proposal about Ledyard Park just to see if they were interested, and they seemed interested in there being open space downtown. And then they're really looking into deer overbrowse, but specifically like how they could measure it and figure out what is an appropriate response.
There are a lot of deer. When last time going home from here, I'm driving on Route 10 and I'm like, who is running with the traffic at this hour? And there were 3 deer running, like they were inside the white line, running in the bike lane along Route 10. And I'm like, holy moly. There's a lot. Too many.
And there's there is another Conservation Commission meeting this week too. The email was just here.
Yeah.
Do you have it in front of you? I had it in front of me and I lost it.
Got it
It's a
today
special meeting.
on Wednesday. Oh, that's a public hearing for
Yes.
the headwaters.
Yes.
So it is Thursday, so that should be
Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah. All right. Is it Wednesday? To the 26th,
Oh, okay.
3/26.
That's
Yeah,
Wednesday.
25.
It's Wednesday.
That's Wednesday.
Okay. So, right day, wrong day.
Thank you, Office Jenny.
That was it.
Yeah, okay. Rob, was there a town manager report that I glossed over? No. Okay, all right. Yes. Anything you wanted to add?
Isn't there a planning board meeting on Tuesday? That's public hearing.
Oh, yes. There's another public hearing on the planning board. Sorry, it's farther down in my notes.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Oh, I thought it was the.
So it's a week, it's
A week from tomorrow.
Planning
On the
board met on
7th.
the
This-
18th.
Yeah, on the
and,
April 7th.
Approved the draft language for a zoning amendment to go to public hearing on the 1st. I
The
believe.
1st. Okay, what's on the 7th? Hold on, let me look on my.
April
We
1st.
meet on the
I might-
7th.
We meet on the 7th. Okay, yeah, so planning board's on the 1st.
Next
Planning board's
Tuesday,
on the
April
1st.
1st.
I just figured it was an opportunity to.
So and I do, so the planning board worked with staff and a community member to work through the issues that came up, developed a revised draft and posted it for public hearing, which will be April 1st. And there are 3 amendments proposed. Those all go to public hearing.
There are some, in our NHMA membership news today, that came in, there's some pretty radical proposals, happening in Concord that will basically give the state the authority to overrule any zoning regulation. It, takes away, I don't know, there were 4 of them that NHMA came out on, and it feels like I'd have to do some letter writing this week because it's some pretty bad stuff in terms of local town control.
Yes, and our local Democratic senator voted with a majority. And so in particular would be a person to reach out to.
Our local senator.
Sue Prentice.
Oh, okay. Thank
She
you.
did, she did reach out to me, making me aware she was going to vote in favor. I did express concern for the loss of local control and that Hanover was moving in a direction that wouldn't be impacted by these legislative changes. Nick, is that you? Thank you.
Or we got it back. We're good.
But if our zoning amendments go forward, we will not be adversely impacted by the legislative changes.
For that one thing,
That one thing.
but there were others that
Others.
don't allow you to testify in support of
Yeah.
or against.
There's
some
language that would
legislation.
prohibit any employee to testify in favor of or in opposition to any legislation pending, because it would be considered lobbying using taxpayer money, or to advocate through NHMA or any other formal professional group. Again, because it would be considered lobbying. There's legislation that would ignore NFPA 101 as it relates to occupancy load and allow for occupancy, a minimum occupancy per bedroom of 2, which is not consistent with the fire code that the state of New Hampshire has adopted. And there are a few other changes that are pending that are pretty radical.
Okay. Thank you.
Lots of
Stupid things. Some more of these people.
Ellen, did you have anything aside from the topic? Did you have anything you wanted to bring to the board's attention? No, okay, all right, thank you. All right, so we do have a need for a non-public. So take a motion to move into public session.
Moving
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming.
Thank
into non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91:1:3, Roman numeral 2, A, B, D, L. A, B, D, E, L.
Okay, I have a second roll call.
Whitcomb, yes.
Burke, yes. Callahan, yes.
Gracias, yes.
Timberland, yes.
We are in non-public. Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you, officer.
Lincoln.